Hey guys, Bobby Bollinger here, and it is time. Draft day is tomorrow, or maybe today, depending on how long this takes to upload. And, of course, I kind of have to do a mock draft. It's all been leading up to this. And after this, the day after the first round, I'll try to put up what I think of how the draft went, and from there, football's done for months. And in its place will probably be like Survivor stuff mainly. I think I might do something else there maybe, but we'll see. In the meantime, today is draft day. Now, how did I make up my mock draft? It's a little bit of what I think should happen, what I think is going to happen, and in a few cases, what I just want to happen. Like, there are players who should go in the first round, who probably will go in the first round, but I just want them to be on a certain team, and that's why they're not in the first round. I'll explain that when I get to them. But let's start this off from the beginning. At pick number 1 of the NFL Draft, the Cleveland Browns select quarterback Baker Mayfield of Oklahoma. Now, in my last video, I said Baker Mayfield was my favorite quarterback, and the Browns pretty much have to take a quarterback number 1. Everyone thinks that's what they're going to do, that's what they should do, and this is what I want them to do, to take a quarterback, and since they're taking a quarterback, take the best one. Baker Mayfield has the huge playmaking ability, he's got good mechanics, he's a sponge for information, is a great leader, and Cleveland has the tools to help him out now with Josh Gordon and that Dolphins receiver. How could I forget his name? It's not one of those players I watch a bunch of, I'm sorry, but I know he's great. They have one guy who led the league in receptions one year and led the league in receiving yards another year. So those two together, like, it should have never happened, but circumstance has made it happen, and that place is kind of nice for a quarterback to be for a change. And if he has to sit a year and learn, Tyrod Taylor is a functional guy to get him across that gap. Now, with the second pick, it actually doesn't matter what the Giants do here, because I have them either, in this case, I have them trading with the Bills, which, for the first round, only affects 2 of the picks Bills have. So, the Giants trade with the Bills, and the Bills take the quarterback out of UCLA, Josh Rosen. I said he was the second best quarterback. Quarterback's being taken, so he's getting taken here. And it really won't matter if it's the Giants or the Bills that pick. Because the Giants, they could take Saquon Barkley. They could take Bradley Chubb. Heck, they could take Quentin Nelson. But the trade that the Jets made with the Colts, they had to pass that same exact trade through the Browns and the Giants, because what if they took it? Then they'd be higher up on the draft board. So that means the Giants refused that huge deal. And you don't refuse that big of a deal unless you're going for a quarterback. It's simply not worth it to take a shot at any other position. Just not worth it to pass up on that many draft picks, that high. So the Giants would be taking a quarterback here, or they could just trade with the Bills for even more, maybe, and either one takes quarterback Josh Rosen. For this, the Bills are taking Rosen, and they're going to be pretty satisfied with the results. Now, with the third pick, the Jets select, surprise, surprise, a quarterback. This time, Luke Falk. I don't know his college. It's kind of a small thing, not really that big of a deal. Luke Falk, like I said, he's not the greatest talent out there, but he looks like he can be a solid quarterback, and he's not going to have an injury history, which is more than can be said for anyone below him. So Luke Falk is the pick here. It's definitely not what's going to happen, but it's what should happen. Now, at pick number 4, we are back to the Browns. Wow. When Deshaun Watson started going off last year, I bet the Browns thought, well, we have the second pick, but it's basically a second rounder with how low it is. Deshaun Watson goes down, and they just stop winning, and all of a sudden, the Browns are picking first and fourth. Now, they could trade this pick, but when you look at what's on the board, you still got Quentin Nelson, you still got Saquon Barkley, you still got Bradley Chubb. All of those players the Browns could legitimately take. So, why not take one? In this case, I don't think O-line is too big of a need for the Browns that they just take Quentin Nelson here. And I also think that with Carlos Hyde on the roster, you don't take the shot at Saquon Barkley, which leaves us with Bradley Chubb. And that would be an excellent thing for them to pick up, and it would create a really good pass rushing duo between him and Myles Garrett. Now, some people have said the Browns can't take Chubb because later on down the road they're going to have to pay Myles Garrett, their new quarterback, and Bradley Chubb at basically the same time. And while that is true, that is something the Browns can, plan for. They get to choose who gets the big contract. They get to choose how it's distributed, who they put their fifth-year options onto. Those are the things the Browns get to control, and I'd much rather have these great years and, have to get rid of one pass rusher than not have had that pass rusher at all. So I would take Bradley Chubb here, greatly bolster their defensive line, and just get that defense to a great state. At least on the line. Now, with the 5th pick of the draft, a team that the Bills could also be trading with, but since I already have them trading with the Giants, the Broncos are sitting pat at number 5. And as it would turn out, it would not matter. Anyway, this draft would not really change regardless of who gets the Bills' picks, whether it's the Bills, the Giants, or the Broncos. They would all end up taking the same guys. Which is, well, for the most part, which is kind of wild. Anyway, the Broncos stay pat, and going into this, I was thinking quarterback. No doubt quarterback, they were going to take this. They had good running backs, and while they could bolster the O-line, you really need a quarterback. And Case Keenum isn't terrible, but it's not going to work out, trust me. Now, the Broncos did something very stupid lately, though. They cut C.J. Anderson. Yeah, a defensive team cut their running back when running is the most important part of the offense for a defensive team. Because that's where you get your breaks for the defense so they can get rested and do their job better. They got rid of that, and now they have to replace it, and they don't have anyone that they can confidently say will replace him. Like, last year, I know they had Sarkandrick West. I don't know if he's still on there, but even if he is, he has fumble concerns. He has health concerns. This guy is not a guarantee to replace CJ Anderson. And the Broncos are going to need a running back, even if just for depth purposes. So, you're at number 5. You need a running back. And the number 1 prospect in this entire draft on pretty much everyone's board is sitting right there. So there's no doubt in my mind the Broncos take Saquon Barkley here. He's a good running back. He should be able to put up some good numbers in spite of the Broncos O-line. And he should be able to help them out a ton, in addition to being pretty good at catching passes, which is nice to have. Now, with the 6th pick of the draft comes the Colts. I'll tell you guys right now, there are probably going to be more trades happening with all the quarterbacks involved, but for this draft, I only have the Bills trading with the Giants to keep things kind of simplified and stop this thing from going way too crazy. So the Colts are sitting at 6, and the 3 main prospects that they would want at this place, only one of them is left. They had legitimate use for Bradley Chubb. They had a legitimate need for Saquon Barkley. They still kind of need a running back. But most of all, they had a need at the offensive line. That was the absolute most pressing concern for them, with Luck having to come back. You need to keep him healthy. And there's only one sure thing in this draft, and that is Quentin Nelson. He is a great guard, a great offensive lineman. I mean, this guy at Notre Dame, he created that running game basically on his own. Now, McGlinchey is helping, but Quentin Nelson is undoubtedly the star of that line. So he should really help the Colts O-line get going, help the running game get going, which is going to be very important under any offensive person coming from the Eagles. And it's just going to... And he's really good at pass protection too, so this guy should be the perfect addition to the Colts. This is the guy I wanted the Colts taking, more than Barkley and way more than Chubb. So I'm perfectly happy that this is the way things should play out. Not just that I want it to be this way. Next up, now, before the Broncos got rid of their best running back for no reason, I was having Saquon Barkley go into the Buccaneers, because no one was really going to need him until then, and the Colts wanted Quentin Nelson more. But the Buccaneers missed out on those big 3 of Chubb, Nelson, and Barkley, all of which they could have used. So instead, they have to go with someone else. Now, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I cannot evaluate every position in the NFL. Like, what I said about Quentin Nelson, it's what I've heard from places I trust. But I don't exactly know for sure. I can't evaluate offensive linemen. And that's not the only one I can't evaluate. It goes to pretty much all of them at this point. There are 3 positions that I trust myself to evaluate, and that's quarterback, because I just think I have a good eye where I can look at the guy and say, yeah, that should be pretty good. Running backs, where I do the same thing. And wide receivers, where I say, does he have strong hands? If so, he's good. Those are the 3 positions I can do. The rest, I'm kind of going off word of mouth. From, like I said, sources that I trust, like the YouTube channel Brett Coleman. Great place, great channel, great evaluations. I get some of my insight from him, and in fact, my favorite cornerback from this draft, I would not even know existed without him. I also look at Walter Football, I think it's called. They have a mock draft. They also have a prospect board rankings, which I kind of go by for some things. So when I talk about safeties, I'm not going to talk too much about their talent because I'm not good at that. So at number 7, the Buccaneers are taking someone in the secondary. It's a safety because they need to bolster their secondary big time. They can also take cornerback. In fact, they may prefer Minkah Fitzpatrick because he can play cornerback as well. But for this case, I'm just going to have the Buccaneers taking the safety Derwin James from, I think it's Ohio. I'm not certain. The Ohio State Buckeyes, I have no clue. And that's what they get. It fits. I don't know his talent. Speaking of Mr. Fitzpatrick, the Bears also have a huge need at cornerback. Now, I was going to put a receiver here, but they addressed that in the offseason enough for cornerback to become more pressing. And in that case, they're going to take the best cornerback that they think is available, Minkah Fitzpatrick. Now, I don't think Minkah is the best cornerback in the draft. This is one of those, what I think is going to happen, taking a little bit of precedence over what should. On to the number 9 pick, the 49ers. They have quite a few needs, as it turns out. Like, they could use a little bit of help on the O-line. They could probably use a new running back, though this is kind of high for a running back. And there's really no one for the O-line that I'm comfortable taking this high. One of the biggest places, though, that they need help is wide receiver, because they don't have the great core that they need to unleash Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, what is Jimmy Garoppolo as a quarterback? Because there are different styles. His, I would say, is kind of West Coast. Basically the same thing Tom Brady does, where he's great at short, he's great at medium, but in Garoppolo's case, the footwork is just not there yet to allow for long shots. So a long range, big play threat kind of receiver isn't necessarily what he needs. At least not yet. For the time being, you need someone who can play that short, medium range better. And in that case, you need someone who has really strong hands and can run routes really well. And that goes to Calvin Ridley from Alabama. I've watched his tapes. I trust that hand strength. Like, that's the main thing I look at, because then I know, will he be able to hold on to the ball? Yes. Well, that's your job. That's the whole thing. So that is my main concern. Calvin Ridley should be great and should work great for the 49ers. 10th pick of the draft, the Raiders. John Gruden is the head coach and says he wants to bring back the old style of football. And he's kind of on the right track. Like, he's got his mind in the right place, because the old style of football was focus on your O-line, focus on your D-line, run the ball as much as you can, and your quarterback is there to take deep shots. And your secondary usually is a little shaky. That's the old way of football. Well, Philadelphia just won the Super Bowl. Great O-line, great D-line, focused on running, quarterback was there to take deep shots, shaky secondary. So the old way of football just won the Super Bowl. So it can work if you set it up right. And John Gruden may be able to set this up right, but first, he's got to get those rough and tumble players. He's got to focus on the rough positions, the hard hitters. And that's going to come since he already has Marshawn Lynch on the defensive side, as he takes probably the most rough and tumble position out there, linebacker, and I'm going to say Roquan Smith from Georgia. Now, is Roquan Smith the best one? I'm not a linebacker guy. I can't say. He's the highest rated on Walter Football, I think. I'm going to go with him. Next up, at pick number 11, the Miami Dolphins. Now, the Dolphins have a lot of holes. They got rid of Ndamukong Suh, Jarvis Landry. That's the former Dolphins wide receiver. That's his name. They got rid of Mike Pouncey, I believe it was, their center. Who else did they get rid of? Oh yeah, Jay Ajayi, who just got done winning a Super Bowl. So, they got rid of literally their 4 best players. Just like that. They're gone. That's going to be impossible to replace. They aren't going to do it. And I quite frankly have to think that the Dolphins are in rebuild mode. And how do you start a rebuild? Well, with a quarterback. And when I heard that the Dolphins were considering a quarterback, I just thought, my first thought was, why? They have Ryan Tannehill. Then I thought about it some more, and I realized last season, Ryan Tannehill didn't play at all. Usually you can wait for your quarterback to come back from that. But then I thought, he wasn't exactly healthy the season before that either. So quarterback really does make sense for them. And if the quarterbacks had gone off the board more quickly, they probably wouldn't be taking one. But as it turns out, a fan favorite landed right in their lap, and his name is Josh Allen. This is a kind of a what would happen at this point instead of what should happen. I'm just gotta say, the Dolphins are going to be extremely disappointed with this pick and be worthless for many, many years to come. Also, Adam Gase isn't going to have that job much longer. At number 12, the Bills traded their pick to the Giants in this. But regardless of whether the Bills trade to the Giants, trade to the Broncos, or even just stay where they are, the same player is being taken because every team needs help on the O-line. The Bills, Richie Incognito may or may not be retiring, and they sipped off a great offensive lineman to the Bengals just to get to number 12. So, regardless of who's here, an offensive lineman is being taken. And that guy is the tackle, Mike McGlinchey from Notre Dame, Quentin Nelson's partner in crime. He's the most highly rated tackle in this draft and should please them. He is a big, tall guy, so he has a ton of length, and pass rushing against him is just going to be hard whether he uses the proper technique or not. And he should be able to learn a good enough technique. Also, he's big and he's tall. I mean, this is just a big dude. Like, you look at him, you look at Quentin Nelson, and you think, whoa, Nelson's tiny. No, McGlinchey is just that freakishly huge. That freakishly tall. Now, so he could play guard, I think. It's not his best position, but if you don't need him at tackle right now, he can play guard for a while and then take over for tackle if he has to. But I do think he'll be starting at tackle. So McGlinchey should be an excellent pick here. Next up on the list, it's the Redskins' turn. Now, funny story about the defensive tackles in this draft. Like, their positions are just locked. They will be taken here. They might be taken in a different order, but defensive tackles will go to the same exact teams, regardless of which one is taken first. In this case, I'm riding on the hype train of Daron Payne to the Redskins because, Alabama. The Redskins really need to stop the run, and while there are things they could do to just help Alex Smith and maybe get to the playoffs, they didn't upgrade at quarterback this offseason. They got rid of Kirk Cousins and got Alex Smith, which is about on the same plane. It's on the same plane right now, though. This year, it's the same plane. As time wears on, Alex Smith gets old, and Kirk Cousins will not be. So Kirk Cousins would have had more longevity than Alex Smith would for you. So it was a stupid situation, and it is definitely going to cause the Redskins to just plummet again. With Kirk Cousins, wouldn't have been the case. With Alex Smith, just because of age, it's going to be the case. So they have no reason to push for the playoffs now. It's not going to happen. Instead, kind of fix some holes while you can. Try to get yourself in a decent position to make a resurgence once you get your next quarterback in 2 or 3 years. And in that case, you got to stop the run. You got to have a decent defense for the first time in who knows. And Daron Payne should do that. Now, he's not as good a run stuffer as the other guy, Vita Vea, but he is a better pass rusher, and that alone is going to get him the top spot, even though I might not necessarily agree with that. Next pick of the draft is the Packers. Now, before the offseason started, the Packers were kind of thin at cornerback. Now that they traded their best cornerback for a quarterback who will never see the field, they need one. They probably don't have enough cornerbacks on their roster right now. So they actually need another one. And this here is the cornerback I learned about from Brett Coleman that I really, really trust as well. And that's Isaiah Oliver. I forget the school. It has a familiar helmet, I believe, but it's not that helmet. Now, he's the best cornerback in this draft. He has the best form. He has freakishly long arms. So even if he does make a mistake, those things can just reach out and make up for it. If he makes a mistake. His form is really good though, so mistakes will not often be made. And he's doing things that veterans do in the league. Rookies usually don't come in knowing that it's okay to kind of put your arm in the way of this, kind of like this. Well, it's okay to put, I can't do it on myself. You just put your elbow right about here so the receiver can't reach up for the ball unless they're going to interfere with you, which is a really, really smart thing to do. And if the refs can call that against you, they're not going to see it because it's so subtle. And that is a big-time veteran move that Isaiah Oliver already knows how to do. So he should be able to just take that cornerback position and roll with it, the same way Marshawn Lattimore did with the Saints. Whew. Moving on, this is going to be a long video, and my voice is going to give out, I swear. The Cardinals. Well, they were interviewing some quarterbacks that were pretty much insured to be second-rounders. But as it turns out, some of the guys from the first round, due to what should happen, are just falling down to them. And the guy they're gonna take, even though they probably shouldn't take him, is Sam Darnold. Now, like I said, Sam Darnold's throwing motion isn't so much a surgeon's pinpoint strike so much as the windmill you see at the side of the road. So he is going to be the biggest of busts. Like, it is going to be awful. So the Cardinals are going to be very deeply disappointed, and they're gonna wish they had gone for Larry Fitzgerald's replacement instead. Moving on to the Ravens. They take a tight end. Now, usually tight ends don't make it to here because it is so hard for any of them to actually look elite in college. The NFL tight end today has to be bulky so he can help with run support, but he also now has to have really good hands. His thing is the short yardage. He has to have just the strongest hands on the field. The ball cannot be ripped from his hands. It cannot. And he has to make those contested catches in college. They have to be his thing in college to even be considered for the first round, because every tight end I've seen is like, even the guy I'm talking about right now, he might not go in the first round. That might not be what actually happens. His name is Hayden Hurst. Not from a big school. The guy from Oklahoma should not be drafted, period. Hayden Hurst, however, his hands are insanely good. Like, this guy has the same kind of build as Gronkowski and Travis Kelce, and they should be able to just make huge use of him and his pass catching ability, and he will be an excellent tight end to help out Joe Flacco become the good quarterback. Like, he will actually give Joe Flacco a decent receiver to throw to for the first time in forever. Next up, a team that's pretty much everyone's suspected dark horse. It's the Chargers. Now, a lot of things have been speculated about what they should get. Some think a quarterback to replace Phillip Rivers. No. Your Super Bowl window is open now. Draft like it. So how do they do that? Their needs are offensive line, defensive line, and a little bit of secondary. Now, on the offensive side of things, they don't need too much on their line to get things going, so I think they can wait till the second round. And defensively, there is an argument for getting more players for their secondary, but because it would just basically eliminate passing from the games they play. But I personally prefer that they stop the run because they are terrible at it. So, in this position, number 17 of the NFL draft, they take the defensive tackle Vita Vea. And they should be very happy with him because he is a mountain of a man. He is huge, and he is really good at stuffing the run. As an added bonus, if he gets the fundamentals down and his hand motion's right, he should become a good pass rusher as well. But the Chargers already have two really good pass rushers in Joey Bosa and whoever the other guy is. I don't pay attention to the Chargers that much, I am sorry. But, so if he can clog the middle and take away that run, that's all he needs to do. And he's already capable of doing that, period. So if they take him, they will be happy with him, even if he doesn't get any better. And that will make their defense the scariest it can be. And it'll definitely get them to the playoffs. Ugh. Next up, number 18, the Seahawks. They need help at offensive line. Period. Pretty much everywhere. They could use an upgrade. And with the defense pretty much sipped off, they really, really have to put their faith in Russell Wilson because that defense is not getting rebuilt anytime soon. So they have to stick with their offense. They have to fix their O-line. And since they need help all over the O-line, why not get a guy who can play literally every position of the O-line? This guy is Isaiah Wynn. He's listed as being able to play tackle, guard, and center. So he can do any one of those things. And for a team that's looking to just get even a decent O-line, having versatile guys like him who can play everything well are really helpful because to play everything well, you have to have the fundamentals there already. So he should come in, he should be a big help, and it'll just be nice for the Seahawks. Next up, the Cowboys. Now, even before getting rid of Dez Bryant, I was kind of having them get a wide receiver. Now that Dez Bryant's gone, they definitely have to get a receiver. And for this, I've taken Courtland Sutton because he's the next best one available. I like his hand strength, and he is a good deep ball threat. Now, Dak Prescott is similar to Jimmy Garoppolo in that his deep ball is not that great. It's not the kind of thing he wants to do. So Courtland Sutton isn't the best fit, but they need someone to even just stretch out the field because Cowboys' offense was really predictable last year. So they'll take Courtland Sutton, and even just using him as a decoy should be helpful. Next up, the Lions. So much needs to happen for the Lions. They need an O-line, they need a running back, they need a defensive line. There's just so much work that needs to be done. And truth be told, what is probably going to happen, and probably what should happen, is that Darius Geis from, I believe it's LSU, gets taken up here. But I kind of want him to go to my Colts, so he's not going to be a first-round pick. We're just going to slide that under the table and pretend that the other Chubb is a better prospect than him. Instead, the Lions take the defensive end, Marcus Davenport, because they need D-line help. He is D-line help. Next up, Bengals at pick 21. They actually did a pretty good job of reestablishing their O-line. Like, going into the season, they were taking an O-lineman in the draft, no doubt. After they traded with the Bills, they got a great offensive lineman. I hear they got a good one in free agency. So they should be set, or at least set enough where they're not using first-round picks on offensive linemen. Instead, they get something for their defense. A linebacker to replace what is an aging core. That linebacker being Tremaine Edmonds. He should be helpful, should fit in. I hope they don't make a thug out of him like they did pretty much everyone else. Next up, hey, it's the Bills/Giants again. Bills traded with Giants, and this is where the Bills probably wouldn't take the same player, that being a running back. But the Giants, they got in this simulation, they got their linemen. Now, they need a run back. So who are they taking? They said take Darius Geis, but we're gonna slide that under the table and pretend that they really like Bradley Chubb. Oh. Ron Chubb. I wrote it down. It's Nick Chubb, I believe, the running back from Georgia. And in reality, I think he kind of sucks. But he's really propped up, so I'm sure they'll take him before Darius Geis. Shh. Moving on to the Patriots. They lost a lot in the offseason. And they lost both tackles. And tackle is really hard to replace. So they're gonna have to try. They're gonna use their first draft pick on it. And while he has slid down the boards a lot because of the combine, I'm gonna say they take Orlando Brown. Next up, Panthers. They need a wide receiver. They need a wide receiver bad. And just the hype for this kid is making this a what will happen situation instead of a what should. What should is happening literally the next pick. What will happen is they take the wide receiver, Cortland. No. They take DJ Moore. I don't think DJ Moore is first round worthy, but I don't think he's not terrible. The Panthers will get him. They'll think, we really should have gotten that in the second round, but I can't complain about having him. Next up is the Titans, who conveniently have the same exact needs as the Panthers and want a wide receiver. They will take the better prospect, Equanimeous St. Brown from Notre Dame. Now, Equanimeous is not the flashy receiver that you should be taking in the first round. So this is a reach, even by my standards. I have him as a high to mid second rounder. But the Titans need to reach. There is no better wide receiver left. And they need one. So they take Equanimeous St. Brown, and they are satisfied with the results because when I see him, I don't see Odell Beckham or any big name wide receiver. But I do see the kind of receiver who can sit on the team and just quietly rack up some 1,000-yard seasons, like the guys on the Broncos. The Titans will be very happy to have him, especially when they're a run-heavy team anyway. They don't need a flashy receiver. Next up is playoff teams now, the Falcons. They got quite a few things they could do. I have them bolstering the defensive line with Arden Key. I think just because he is slipping so far for his talent level because so few teams actually needed the defensive end, but the Falcons will take him. Now the Saints. The Saints, I don't know why I made this selection here. I guess I liked it. I'm not sure. It's entirely possible I put this on the wrong place, but they take the guard/center Billy Price. Even reading this, I'm not certain that's even the right one. The one that I wanted to put here even, but you know what? They take the guard/center Billy Price, and they work with it. Next up, the Steelers. Well, you know the Steeler that basically broke his own neck? Yeah, that guy, he's not playing ever again. And he should not play ever again. It is too huge of a risk to his health. So the Steelers, absolutely have to have a plan to replace him. So they have to take a linebacker, and that guy will be Rashawn Evans. This low in the first round, you're not getting big names. Next up, Jaguars. They could use some offensive line help, yes. I'm not sure they need it that bad, though. So they'll bolster up the one position of their defense that wasn't perfect and just ride off of that for a couple years. That being linebacker, and they take Harold Landry. Now the Vikings, they need offensive line help bad because they want to run. They run a lot. But they suck at it. Even with Dalvin Cook, the O-line is not where it needs to be. And the position that helps the running game best for the O-line is guard. So they'll reach for the guard, James Daniels, in an attempt to get that running game going that they want and to help Kirk Cousins stay upright. Patriots, again, they, besides taking that tackle, they also need to bolster the defense, period, because it was not good. They could bolster defensive line, they could bolster linebacker, they can bolster cornerback. There's a lot of room for improvement. So in this one, they're taking the cornerback, Denzel Ward. I don't know why I think he's from Ohio. It doesn't matter. They take him to fix themselves. And then at number 32, what do you fix on a roster that just won the Super Bowl? Well, in the Eagles' case, you don't need to fix the O-line. You don't need to fix the D-line. You certainly don't have to fix quarterback. You don't have to fix receiver. You don't have to fix tight end. So that leaves the secondary, and the secondary has room to improve. It's not terrible. They won the Super Bowl with it, but it needs help, and I'm going to give them a little bit of that help at linebacker, as they take Darius Leonard and conclude the first round of the NFL Draft. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to go make sure I didn't blow out my voice.